Those are live pictures from the High Court where there's just been, it's been dismissed a case that sought to make the election exclusively electronic. That happened just a few minutes ago. The High Court found that a complementary system for voter identification is indeed in place, and there was public participation in enacting the regulations. Now, this is how this all came out. IEBC was going to be compelled to exclusively use the electronic system to verify voters and transmit results. That's according to the case itself. 3 judges comprising George Kimondo, Joseph Mabea, and Hedwig Ogundi have issued the verdict after the National Super Alliance, IEBC, and the Jubilee concluded making their submissions for and against the mechanisms to be adopted on the polling day should the electronic system fail. So what's coming from there, and those are live pictures, is that the High Court has dismissed the case that sought to make the election exclusively electronic, and they found that a complementary system for voter identification is indeed in place, and there was public participation in enacting the regulations. Apollo, you made you spoke about this earlier on. So what do you make of that ruling?
I think that clarification now goes on, because everybody has been wondering, what is this complementary system? Now, with that clarification, I think people need to go on and face the election now. You see, the reporting has also not been very, very clear. The law does not talk about suspension of election. It only talks about postponement of election if the system fails. Okay? So postponement means even if you stop now and you say we are going to start after 2 hours, that is a postponement. And even tomorrow, you can even do it tomorrow. Sometimes the weather, has affected election in a particular polling station, or maybe the ballot papers did not arrive in that polling station. So you'll find that the polling actually happens the next day. That is what is called postponement of election. So the case that was taken before the court was, if the electronic system fails, should that postponement occur until that system again revives or is brought up? But now, from what I'm seeing, the court has said, no, there's enough complementary system and backup that there is no need to litigate on that issue. And I think another issue was whether, in coming up with the regulation, there was public participation again. And the court have said, yes, there was adequate public participation. The IEBC has been able to demonstrate that there was public participation. You see, now they say public participation is part of it, and yes, it happened. Okay. Yes.
IEBC CEO Ezra Chiloba also spoke about this. I'll be playing you the soundbite in just a bit. He talked about the complementary systems that are there. But Maylene, what do you make of that argument as well, the verdict of the court?
I think what IEBC should have done from the beginning is using the means that they have to educate all the parties involved, or to give sufficient information to the public. That would have saved sufficient judicial time. I mean, our judiciary has so many cases to attend to in a day. So for me, IEBC failed in that perspective of making this information available from the word go. All parties are well versed with this information or with what they were looking for. So if the information was available in good time and to the parties in good faith, they would have saved us a lot of time. Because the court has just said there's sufficient backup, there was public participation. But if this information was available to the public, to all the stakeholders, there will not be need to be in court. Okay.
This is what the CEO Ezra Chiloba had to say about the complementary systems and the system they put in place during the election. Listen in.
If you look at the date we gazetted the register, which was, I think, on 27th of June, up to now it's been about 3 weeks. There are other activities that we had to undertake. You, first of all, gazette, prepare the same register for purpose of distributing it to the constituencies, because the law requires that we print the register and make it available at the constituency offices. So that is work that was still going on. Now, you also remember that we were dealing with the issues of the audit and availing the report of the audit, which also came almost at the same time. So what the Commission has done is to establish a web portal that allows access to the register of voters. The first data that we started with was the distribution of voters per county, per constituency, per polling station. That information has been available out there. But we also provided a platform for verification where we had the register available actually online, only that you could only access it if you queried your data using your ID number.
You're talking about the 70,000?
The 70,000, but now we have a platform for the online.
Okay.
But for the other one, I know what you're driving, and having the names of individuals as distributed per polling station availed online. We said we're going to make that available today, and as I speak now, if you go to our website, you will be able to find that. It's already been published. Okay. So you'll find your name there. Your ID will be truncated, meaning we will not give out the full information about your ID to be able to protect the privacy of individuals. But then we'll also be able to point out which polling station will be available. So it's now available online and anyone is able to access it.
Amina, what do you make of those responses from Ezra?
It just goes back to saying that they're not giving the public information the way we should be consuming this information. I thought the register was not published until last night when I had to go to the website and look at what he is saying. So for me, IEBC is failing in giving the public information by the right means. Everyone expects them to publish. It's unreasonable to publish in our newspapers and the gazettes. Those are a lot of papers to publish. Yeah. They have played their role, but they have not given us that information. They have not let the Kenyan know this information is already published, it is here, let you not be misled.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with Amina. You see, this is the first election since the multi-party era that we are going to face without civic education. It's amazing. And especially for people like Amina who are going to be the first time voters. Yes. You see, if you go to a polling station right now and then you put your biometrics and then somehow it doesn't bring you up, okay? And we have not educated the voter that actually there's a complementary system. Yes. That then now you need to demand, nobody should turn you away, that we can't see you here. You need to demand that your ID is done this way, so that, it pops up and all that. Because if you don't educate the public, I'm sure some people are not going to vote. They're going to be disenfranchised.
Ezra Chiloba himself said that if they cannot identify you via biometrics, then they'll just key in your ID number and the details will still just appear. That's
what I'm saying, yeah. That's what Ezra is telling us. Yeah. But we don't know what will happen actually on that voting day, because you can get a polling clerk who just dismisses somebody and many things that everybody is watching Ezra Chiloba talk. No, people need to be educated. Somebody somewhere in the rural area can be turned away because your biometrics are just not popping up. You see, we don't have the assurance that a polling clerk will be so philanthropic enough to tell you now, oh, your biometrics is not popping up. Yeah. Now, wait here, we want to do this other process, okay? Yeah, so those are the issues. And what I'm trying to say is that civic education was not done. The reasons why it was not done, we know. Because the government clamped down on the NGOs that are supposed to do it, and also even blocked the resources that were supposed to come to these NGOs to undertake civic education. I sympathize with first-time voters. Okay. Yeah.
Is that the same feeling now? Me, yes, basically.
I find myself having to go to their website to look up all that information, to read some things in the newspaper. But then again, when I go back to the website, I find that the newspaper is sometimes wrong, because with the issue of the register, it was published, but the mainstream media kept saying it has not been published, the register is not yet out. IEBC has not come out clearly and told us it is published, it's on the website. But you see, not everyone can access that website. As you said, we are assuming too many things. We are assuming that all Kenyans are techno-savvy and can go online and check out the website. They're assuming that all Kenyans can read and write. that presumption is misplaced. IEBC has failed in that perspective of giving information in good faith. Here, take the information, go educate yourself, even if there's no civic education. With the platforms that they have, the media has been dealing with IEBC in good faith. You've given them the platform. They're just not, they did not utilize it. Not to say they're not doing their job. The register was published in good time. But they have not told us. So we don't know. It does not serve us when it's on the website and we don't know.
Okay. Let's delve deeper into this issue. And Ken Mijungu is joining us on phone from the High Court. Ken, what stood out for you during this ruling and what kind of an impact does it have?
All right, Trevor, I think the most important thing in this ruling is the fact that the IEBC will proceed with its plans to establish a complementary system just in case the electronic one fails. And the other fact is that NASA lost in this because it was NASA's application. And Trevor, what they were looking at is around technology in the forthcoming election. And what they wanted the court to do in a nutshell was to find that perhaps the IEBC was not ready for the election. In fact, it was an argument after the ruling was made, and the advocate for NASA, that is Paul Mwangi, was actually forced to explain that he did not intend to have the elections postponed, because if you look at the submissions, that was sort of what they were looking at, because they were questioning the ability or the preparedness of the IEBC to conduct the forthcoming election. And what they were saying in a nutshell, because I have a summary of the ruling here, I will try and read a few parts, Trevor, before you ask me questions. And the petitioner, that is NASA, contended that IEBC was mandated also to make regulations about 60 days before the general election. And this also revolved around public participation. So one of the questions that the court was determining was there public participation? It found that indeed regulations were enacted and they were taken to Parliament that enabled the establishment of the complementary system, and that is one thing that they squarely got out of the way, that indeed the complementary system will work. Now, the court also found that the sections of the law that talks about this clearly stipulated that the technology shall be used in the first general election, which was held, which is going to be held in a few days' time. I think it's about 17 or 18, and shall be restricted. That is the electronic part of it, to voter registration, identification, and results transmission. And also, that act is the one that provided for the enactment of regulations to operationalize this section. So the question, as I mentioned earlier, Trevor, was there public participation? And indeed, they found that the IEBC had made the regulations and forwarded to Parliament. Parliament is the representative of the people. So the fact that it went through that process, Trevor, indeed there was public participation. And the other thing that they talked about is a complementary system, just in case the electronic one fails. And remember, this was premised on the fact that in 2012 the transmission failed. So this is something that they wanted to get out of the way, and indeed the court held that indeed there's that complementary system just in case that fails. So the prayer that the election becomes electronically exclusive was not granted to NASA, and indeed the IEBC has been allowed to go ahead with its complementary system, and indeed they have already been working on that, Trevor. So about the regulation that I'm talking about, that is the complementary mechanism. If you look at the law and what the law envisaged in terms of a complementary mechanism, just in case that electronic one failed, indeed this is also something that was gotten out of the way, and Apollo Mbowe can explain that why this was important to NASA at this particular point. Remember, there was the tussle that also went to Parliament that Jubilee side took, and it was passed overwhelmingly that indeed there should be, apart from just having an electronic system, there needs to be a backup, which is manual. So essentially, Trevor, this ruling allows the IEBC to establish another system, sort of a backup, just in case the electronic one fails. Then they have something else, Trevor.
Ken, so what options does NASA have after this ruling now? Because this is the second ruling in a row that seems to go against them.
It looks as though it's gone against them, Trevor, but indeed it's a right of an applicant to appeal. First instance, in this case, they have been allowed to appeal. They have been given the copy of the judgment. And if indeed they want to appeal this, yes, the only option they have is just appeal it in a higher court, probably Court of Appeal, against this judgment. And if they get it, fine, they will go and appeal. But against what? Is it the setting up of the complementary system? Is it about public participation? And remember, I'm mentioning that it's a second subsequent petition that they are losing. Remember, the question about public participation also came in the other one. And this question, I think it's been fairly dealt with conclusively. The other one was in relation to procurement. This one is in relation to regulations and if stakeholders were involved in enacting these regulations. And just the fact that it was forwarded to Parliament, because the fact that IEBC comes up with the regulations, they still have to forward it to Parliament for approval. So yes, the issue of public participation has yet again been dealt with completely, and I think also Paul Mboya will be able to talk about public participation and Article 10(2)(a) of the Constitution. So yes, the option here, Trevor, is to appeal, and they've been given the right to appeal.
All right. Thanks, Ken. That's Ken Mijungu speaking to us from Milimani Law Courts. We'll be delving deeper into that ruling in just a bit with Apollo Mboya still with me and Amina Mohammed as well. And Apollo, earlier on we were speaking to Ken on this ruling, and you wanted to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I think Ken was inviting me to comment because, as you'll recall, I was a rapporteur for the Joint Committee of Parliament, both Senate and National Assembly, that came up with the Election Laws Amendment Act 2016. I drafted most of it, and I know what we did. And he invited me specifically why the question of electronic complementary backup was very critical in this issue. Now, when Parliament, both Senate and National Assembly, said that we must have a register with biometric, okay? Now, it meant that the register is not physical. Now that's why we have to start from, because how do you keep a biometric features in a
physical
in a paper? So then everybody agreed that then the register is electronic, and that's so it comes also to the question of publishing. Remember that issue that publish the register.
Yeah.
I mean, if you publish the register is not only names and ID numbers anymore. The law changed. Now, if then the register is electronic, then the backup then must be electronic. That was where the argument was coming from. Because then, how do you back up biometric features? It can only be an electronic. And that's why it was critical. But why, again, it became critical, if you tie it with the transmission, was that during the discussion, I remember members of Parliament and even experts came and talked about the hacking that could happen when there's transmission and all that. And that is why, again, NASA took out litigation that then let's have the announcement of the results at the constituency. Yes. So that if in the event when it's being transmitted, somebody hacks it, already people know the results. So those are the issues that came out during the discussion, even when we were coming up with that law.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I mean, do you want to delve into that as well? We've just been informed that NASA is actually going to appeal that particular ruling. So what are the likely outcomes? It
is their right to appeal. Yeah. They have that right to appeal, and let them go ahead and appeal it.
But what are the likely outcomes of this, even if they appeal it now?
Well, we will just have to wait and see now that they're going to the Court of Appeal, yes?
Yes.
Okay, they will have an opportunity to be heard by probably a 5-judge bench. And just like the other case, it will be determined in a very short period of time so that the public can also be informed and move on. So let's just wait and see what happens. But the probability of success, I think IEBC, and as they have come out, the only thing that is missing is just educating the people.
Yeah.
They've said it is there. Public participation has been done, which is very important. It is an expression of the sovereignty of the people. Let's move on. If they let them appeal, let's wait and see.
Apollo, what are the likely scenarios? Because one, either the court would actually uphold the High Court's ruling, or if it is thrown out, does that then mean there's going to be postponement in certain areas like you're saying? Because the argument was not for a complete postponement of the elections. It was just for postponement in areas where the electronic system fails.
Okay, good. Yeah. Now, again, we have to take it back and look at it. After we came up with the Election Laws Amendment Act 2016, and that process was over and we finished it, towards the end of the year, 2016, because of politics, they went and amended the law. Yeah. That is when they brought in this issue of complementary. It was never there, okay, after our process was finished. Now, when this issue was brought to the floor of Parliament, you'll realize that there was a lot of heated debate because it was looked at that what is this complementary system that IEBC is being allowed to put in place. It could be a conduit for stealing of votes because it is just complementary. Yeah. It could be manual. But then the question arose, and I think that is the gist of the case that was before court. Mm-hmm. If then the voters register is electronic with biometric features, the only backup system that you can have must also be electronic. Yeah. So that and we normally have backups in every institution, even in servers. We have a server, if it fails, this one picks and everything is a seamless. So the question is, if you go manual, then how are you going to identify the voters when they come to vote if you're not going to use their biometric features because it is electronic? Then the complementary system, and they have been trying to explain that okay, we can take your ID and we put key in and it pops up. Yeah. Okay? And then in that way, then we allow you to vote. Now, is that a conduit for stealing elections? How many people will go through that? Or will the system be made not to work specifically on that day, and then they say, now we go to the default. We are going all complementary.
That's a tricky argument because Ezra Chiloba was here yesterday. And he said the thing is, even if you cannot be identified biometrically, your ID number will be keyed in and your features will pop up, and the election observers will be there to watch, plus the polling agents, when you're given the form 34 or 34A, I think, to fill in the details. So this is something that is actually verifiable because the agents will be there, election observers will be there. There's a form showing that you could be identified.
The catch is this. Even the register as it is right now is contentious. Remember the cleaning, and I don't have to say everything that has been said. KPMG report, people are saying that they're still seeing some dead people there. Okay? So if you're using that complementary system, I can come basically with somebody's ID and vote. That's what it means because it's going to pop up. Anyway, the person is in the system. Yeah. He's dead, but I can walk in with an ID. It's keyed in, everybody will watch, it will pop, it will show that there's some person, and you'll vote. Those are the issues.
I have to disagree with the senior here because we are looking at this issue from the view that the worst case scenario will happen. This is a worst case scenario, and we have a tendency of going to the worst side of life. We don't want to deal in good faith. It's not that we are going to rely with the alternative system. We already have the biometric identification system,
which is going to be the primary.
Yes, which is going to be the primary, and it's working clearly. But all IEBC are saying, just in case, in the event that, unlikely event actually. In the
now you sound like you're holding me for IEBC.
I should. They have no one in their corner. I think I should be there. In the unlikely event that your information is not available in the primary system, we will use your ID. And it's your ID has a picture. We can look at you and ask you, say your ID number, and we look at you again. I think those people are trained well to identify individuals who are using other people's IDs and stuff like that. So let's stop with this story
and
of worst
the
case
event that
scenario.
you're actually bringing up, it means then yourself, who's the living version of you, could not have voted. Because before they use that ID that you're saying, maybe somebody is passed on and you bring up an ID, first you have to try biometric identification. It will show that Apollo Mboya had voted and is here. So there's no way, you cannot come to the polling station and say that I am not going to try using this biometrics, I just want you to use my ID.
Okay, let me tell you this, and because these are the issues that were discussed. People, have you heard of importation of voters from our neighboring countries? I'm telling you things that happen, okay? So then somebody will come and they'll put their biometric and it's not there.
But this is now a worst case scenario, right?
I'm telling you the worst case scenarios. By the way, all what we're talking about here is the worst case scenarios. Because we expect that the electronic system should work and should not fail. Remember, in the last election, also we were also told that it will not fail, Trevor.
And then it did.
It did, yeah. That's what I'm saying. So we are talking about worst case scenarios. Okay. And worst case scenarios, these things are system. Remember, everybody has said, even in the studio here, the system can fail. Yeah. Remember? But it can also be made to fail. So that we go to that default complementary system. And those are the issues why NASA was litigating this aspect.
I think the complementary system, as you said, it's biometric, it's electronic, it has the same information as the register. Yeah. So let's go back then and look at the register if you're not convinced that the alternative system is eligible or correct.
You got it right. Now that's what they were litigating, that let's have a complementary system. But that complementary system must mirror the register with all its features, because the register's got what? Biometric. Yeah. So it can only be an electronic version as a...
It's electronic. You give me your ID, I key in your number, the information pops up. It's electronic. Okay. It only emits the use of your fingerprint, which is the biometric part.
No, you see, in identification, in identification, what the law envisaged, that identification is not going to be the way we used to identify each other. Having voted several times, Trevor, you know how we used to vote. You remove your voter's card and you remove your ID.
But we already changed that.
Yes. So now, the law changed. They said, no, this was a conduit because anybody can vote. Let's use what? Biometric. Yeah. Okay? So it means for you to vote, first you must be identified biometrically. Yeah. Now, people also normally mistake, and people need to read the law. When we defined what is biometric features, we did not only say that it's on your thumbprint. Yeah. We said iris, earlobes. You see, there are several features that are biometric in nature. So which means even if you don't have a finger, you still have biometric feature because they take your photos and the iris. Our iris are not the same. Okay? So those are the, people are saying, okay, if you are saying this is the primary one with a thumb, okay, then the default then now should be iris, which is actually also electronic. Okay. That was what the litigation was all about. All right. But they did not. They were saying, yes, they must be complementary. Everybody agrees. But the nature of this complementary is what we were talking about. We didn't want a complementary where we go back to the books, the register, the big register, which does not have your biometrics.
Okay, and that is where the main question now comes up. Yes. Is IEBC ready? And this is what CEO Ezra Chiloba had to say about their readiness for the coming elections.
If you look at the picture, one thing you have to appreciate is that this has been a massive, massive exercise. If you look at the timelines within which we had to ensure that we have the kits available in the country, and then the human resource that we needed to deploy to get them ready for the election, it's a complex and immense exercise. And as of yesterday, I want to confirm that we had configured all the kits for purposes of this election. And this is like 3 weeks ahead of the election. Okay. Something that, if you compare now and 2013, we are far much ahead.
Essentially, what are the kits for? What will they assist us?
Now, on the polling day, we're going to use the kits for purposes of biometric verification of voters. The primary mode of identifying voters on the polling day will be biometric. So there's no, if there'll be any other way, then we have a procedure that we put in place to ensure that only eligible voters are allowed to vote on the polling day. Then after the polling, in the evening, once the votes have been counted, we're going to use the same kit to transmit results from the polling station to the tallying center. And the transmission will be in two formats. There will be text data where you just key in information, the figures, and beside it, there will be a scanned image of the form that has been used to tally the results at the polling station. Okay. All that information will be transmitted from the polling station to the tallying center for purposes of further processing.
All right, so that forms the main question here. Is IEBC ready? Having had the CEO.
I think they are ready. I think they are ready For me, I think they are ready. What needs to happen is that they need to bring everybody on board with respect to every processes that will take place in case there is a failure of the system. And people just need to embrace what we have. They're trying to explain what they have. It might not be what is you know, comfortable for everybody, but that is what they have.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a first-time voter, I mean, do you believe your vote will count?
Yes, I believe my vote will count.
Okay.
I feel IEBC have really struggled to get to where they are. They should be given room now, let them proceed to deliver us the August 8th elections. When it comes to the systems, they have worked hard to boost the credibility of the primary system. The alternative one, let's have hope that the primary biometric system will work, the first system that will work. They have used clarification of information where you had to key in information to see if you're present in the register and all that to bolster the credibility of the primary kit. So I think they have done their job with the environment that they were in, which is a very tough environment to work. We put our institutions in a very, very political position. So they play politics, they go to court, and at the end of the day, they still have to deliver on their mandate. So we really have to give them now time to breathe and deliver us the elections. Politicians, go politic. You have 18 days. I don't know why they're still on the corridors of justice, which they should be. It's good for them. It's good for our judicial system and for our laws and jurisprudence, but they're missing the point. Go politic, let the institution work. It is an independent institution at the end of the day.
All right.